It's that time of year. Hide your kids, hide your wife. For 30 days, things are going to get real. I'm not talking about funny uncle, confirmed bachelor, amiably private and respectful and otherwise normal kind of. Oh no. I'm talking militant, marching in the street, paint your children rainbow kind of. It is Pride Month. How did June become Pride Month? According to the official story, the way June became Pride Month is that on June 28th, 1969, a brave woman of color stood up to oppressive, homophobic police forces who were trying to shut down the Stonewall Tavern in New York for harboring oppressed homosexuals who simply wanted to sip their cosmos in peace. And because of her act of defiance, people of goodwill rallied together to defend the rights of this poor, put-upon minority, leading to a new civil rights movement and the extension of freedom and justice to all. That is the story that school children, and adults for that matter, will be taught ad nauseum for the next 27 days. And the only problem with that story is that it is completely bogus. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Dr. Fauci is testifying on Capitol Hill today, and just one day ahead of Fauci's testimony, the GOP has released closed-door testimony from Fauci in January, where he admits to all sorts of misdirections during COVID and to issuing guidance based on absolutely nothing scientific. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, though, you got to check out Birch Gold. Text Knowles, KNWLAS, to 989898. We recently had some monumental news. No one's talking about it. For the first time in our history, the interest we pay on the national debt has surpassed every individual budget item except for Social Security. The U.S. now spends more on interest than on national defense or Medicare, and the situation is getting worse as the government continues to spend like drunken sailors. That is why investors, central banks, and concerned savers are turning to gold, something not tied to the inflated U.S. dollar. You can too with the help of Birch Gold. Birch Gold understands that navigating financial decisions can be scary. That is why their dedicated in-house IRA department is there to guide you every step of the way. Birch Gold is committed to addressing your questions and concerns promptly. Whether it's about fees, taxes on rollovers, or the timing of the process, they are here to ensure you feel valued and well informed. I'm very glad that I've got a significant portion of my portfolio in gold, especially as the political order gets crazy. Text Knowles to 989898 to talk to one of Birch Gold's experts and claim your free info kit on gold. You will learn how to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Best part is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Text Knowles to 989898. That is Knowles to 989898. Pride Month is founded on an historical lie. This is not just a conservative Christian throwing bombs at the notion of Pride Month. Even the libs, even the pro-Pride Month people, even the New York Times admit that the Pride Month story is fake.
The gay rights movement was born in 1969 at a beloved gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. The Stonewall riot began when a drag queen, bereft by the death of Judy Garland, threw a brick at a police officer. The riot culminated in a Rockette-style kick line of drag queens facing down tactical police in riot gear. It's a beautiful story, but it's not exactly true.
It's not true. That's a video from the New York Times. It's not even a recent video. I think the Times put that video out in 2019. So what really happened there? The Times doesn't just leave it at this kind of ambiguity of the drag woman of color doing a Rockettes routine to stop the police because they were upset over Judy Garland dying. No. The Times goes into what exactly was wrong.
Next, was the Stonewall Bar as idyllic as some media portrays it to have been?
The Stonewall Inn was a safe haven for the queer community.
But it was a dump.
It was a hellhole.
Dirty, rundown, mafia-run.
A mafia sleazy bar, and they watered down drinks.
Watered down drinks.
There was a much better bar called the Cherry Lane.
The 10th of always.
Cookies.
So the Stonewall Inn was neither New York's only gay bar, nor an especially beloved institution. Now, let's talk about that drag queen who started it all.
They said that she threw the first shot glass at Stonewall, and it was the shot glass heard around the world.
One of the persistent myths about Stonewall is that Marcia threw the first cocktail glass. Marcia herself said in an interview that I did with Marcia, I didn't get there until 2.
I was uptown. I didn't get downtown until about 2 o'clock, because when I got downtown, the place was already on fire and it was a raid already.
So this guy who calls himself Marcia is the figure who supposedly kicked off the Stonewall uprising, where the poor beleaguered homosexuals and all the rest of them finally said enough is enough to the police who were trying to stop them from just loving each other and having a drink. But even this guy, the drag queen, says, no, that's not real. I showed up eventually, but the whole thing was already going on. Why? Why did that guy become the central figure? Because he fits the narrative today. Maybe not the narrative back in the 70s or 80s or 90s even, but today, where the LGBT movement, the Pride movement, has moved way beyond homosexual relations and redefining marriage. And now we're trying to allow men into women's bathrooms. Now we're trying, as a matter of the new civil rights movement, the movement has gone so much further, and now, because of intersectionality, we have to always consider race and sex in a pyramid of oppression and hierarchies of victimhood. And so this guy is the perfect person to have started the uprising. It's not enough just to be a white guy who's gay. It's not enough to kind of look normal. No, you got to be a identifying drag queen cross-dressing black gay guy. That's so much more powerful for the narrative, even though the history doesn't really back that up. What this is all about. Forget about the Pride Month, forget about Stonewall for a second. What the New York Times is telling us is that this is all about the power of symbolism. The New York Times piece is titled, "The Stonewall You Know is a Myth, and That's Okay." The libs understand the power of narrative and storytelling and myth. Conservatives have observed this ad nauseum for some years now. But we haven't looked into why they choose this month. Why June? Is it just because of the Stonewall riot? There were plenty of gay bars all over the country. There were plenty of clashes between people who were doing weird sex stuff and people who were trying to enforce the law and community standards. There were plenty of pride parades. These things were happening at different times all throughout the country. Why did they settle on June? Because of the mythic power of June. And when I say mythic, I mean like old school myths. I mean, where does the word June come from? The month of June is named after Juno, the ancient Roman goddess of marriage. To make June about weird sex stuff is a direct mythic attack on the institution of marriage, which is what this has always been, because the whole conception of Pride Month is about upending sexual norms. Well, the bedrock sexual norm is the fundamental unit of politics, and that is marriage. It is no surprise then that a movement that supposedly just had the modest ambition of trying to allow homosexuals to have a Cosmo at a bar ends up redefining marriage as its major political victory, and then going further to follow its ideas to its logical conclusion, to pretend that there's no actual distinction between men and women, and to enshrine in our law that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man, and we have to be able to as a matter of civil rights. That was built in. Frankly, it goes back even before the gay rights movement. It goes back to feminism, which makes exactly the same claim that men and women are indistinguishable, indiscernible, and one can become the other. But the symbolism really works. It's really powerful. June is the month of marriages, usually the month of weddings. I was married in June. A lot of people were married in June. That symbolism really matters. I mean, you think about the symbolism in so many other unrelated moments of American history. What was the name of the case, the Supreme Court case, that overturned laws against interracial marriage? Loving versus Virginia. That's the perfect name. That's an amazing name for a case. Loving versus Virginia. Whose side are you on? Virginia's side, the government side, or Loving? I think you're probably on the side of love. Brown versus Board of Education. It's kind of funny, but what's it about? It's about allowing brown people to go into the white schools. Brown versus Board of Education. I'm not saying that, some secret sorcerer cooked this up in a lab somewhere and found the plaintiffs such that the names would be there. But it just has mythic power. That's why these images stick in your mind. Think of, on racial issues, hands up, don't shoot. This is what we were told when in Ferguson, Missouri, this criminal, this gigantic criminal, robs a convenience store, then punches a cop in the face, then grabs his gun, then moves away, and then charges back at the cop, and he's finally put down because he was threatening the cop's life. The narrative became a sweet little boy was kneeling on the ground, had his hands up. He said, "Don't shoot me," and the cop killed him execution style. Has nothing to do with the reality, but it has a great deal of mythic power. It plays into the entire image of the hegemonic police forces, white police forces, just killing the innocent and helpless black children. They even portray him as a young child. This is why with Trayvon Martin, when the reality of what happened to Trayvon Martin came out, the libs chose the narrative. They tried to turn his killer, George Zimmerman, into a white guy. George Zimmerman was Hispanic. They said, no, he's a white guy. And then when it came out that he was Hispanic, they said he's a white Hispanic. He doesn't even look that white. He's a Hispanic guy. And what did they do to Trayvon? They turned Trayvon from a relatively large 17-year-old who had some behavioral issues, let's say, into a 12-year-old. The image that they were showing of Trayvon Martin was that of a little child because it served the narrative. This is the point of Pride Month. The reason it's not in May or October or December or January is because June is the month of marriage, and the entire purpose of the Pride movement is because sex is so fundamental to human nature and the bedrock political institution is marriage. So an attack on marriage is a political revolution, which is exactly how they portray the Stonewall, quote unquote, uprising. The silver lining in this year's Pride Month is that the libs are at each other's throats because they have competing ideological fancies at the moment. So in Philly over the weekend, there was a clash between two leftist demonstrations, the Pride Parade and the Pro-Palestine protesters. And it was simply delightful. At the rainbows, you got the marching, you got the body paint, and then you got the kefias. And then you got more sort of pride protesters, but then someone's holding a pride flag and it says no pride in genocide. But then, so some of the pride people seem down with the, but then others of the pride people don't want the gay movement to be blended in with the Sharia movement, the pro-Palestine, pro-movement. Fair enough, because of course, if any of these or homosexuals were in Gaza, they would be promptly. So they recognize that there's an ideological tension there. But the pro-Palestine, pro-Pride people, they say that doesn't really matter. We need to all recognize that we have a common enemy, the Jews, well, and even beyond the Jews, the white people and the political establishment and whoever else. So they're just completely confused. They're at each other's throats, to which I say, yes. It's that image of Jack Nicholson in the movie, go on, yeah. Hey, where do I buy a rainbow keffia? Let's go. Yeah, ooh, ooga booga booga. Go fight each other. My take on it is a take that many people have had in politics since at least the Iran-Iraq war, which is, let them fight. I hope they both lose. Speaking of policy, you ought to check out Policy Genius. Go to policygenius.com/Knowles. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius's technology makes comparing life insurance quotes from America's top insurers easy. Just a few clicks. Policy Genius has licensed agents who can help you find the best fit for your needs. When they make it this easy, there's no excuse not to do it. Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies. That means they are not incentivized to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. It gives you peace of mind. It is the right thing to do because it means that your family is going to be taken care of if, God forbid, something happens to you. At a certain point, something's going to happen to all of us. No one here gets out alive. Head on over to policygenius.com/Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much money you could save. policygenius.com/Knowles. A big part of the libs' urgency in imprisoning Donald Trump is that the leftist coalition right now is in big trouble. They're in turmoil. They're at each other's throats. They hate Biden because he's too pro-Israel. They hate Biden because he's too pro. They hate Biden because he's not focusing on this particular hobby horse or this particular hobby horse or this or that or the other thing. So they're in dire straits. And also, nothing Biden has done really has worked. The one thing they like that he's done is give away a bunch of freebies to them. So they like that he's forgiving student loans. They like that he's wasting our strategic oil reserves. They at least like that maybe that'll bring gas prices down a little bit, even if they're not conscious of it, because they hate the idea of gas and of air pollution. They like that Biden is vociferously pro. They like that Biden is fanatically pro-infanticide. They like that stuff. But in terms of the nuts and bolts dinner table issues, Biden has completely failed. Even the Democrats are sick of all this mass migration. They don't like the instability around the world, and they obviously don't like that the economy is in the doldrums. So Biden has got to take extraordinary measures. And one way that he's doing that is allowing his liberal political and judicial establishment to imprison his enemies, and specifically Trump. And he's encouraging this. It's so transparent that when Biden was asked about the potential imprisoning of Donald Trump, which Trump is blaming on Biden, when he was asked about that point blank, he just sort of smirked.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir?
Biden stops. He turns. And there's
Do you
that
think
smile.
the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
And then he slowly walks away. If you were filming a gangster movie, I don't know, even forget a gangster movie, a superhero movie, where the supervillain is imprisoning the leader of the people, and then you had this scene in there, it would seem exaggerated even by the standards of a superhero movie. Mr. President, he's walking off. He doesn't even need to answer this question. Mr. President, Donald Trump is blaming you for imprisoning him because he's your political rival. What do you say to that? And Biden stops, just that slow smirk. Oh, he does, huh? And then he walks off the screen. What is dangerous about this is the brazenness. If Biden had come out and he said, this is outrageous. The Lady Justice is blind. If Donald Trump didn't want to go to jail, he shouldn't have committed crimes. No man is above the law. I'm not above the law. My opponent's not above the law. No man. We have corruption in this country, and we need to make sure people are held to account. I would never target my political enemies. This is about the law, holding people accountable. It would have been total BS, but at least we would say hypocrisy is the tribute vice pays to virtue. At least Biden would be pretending to uphold a standard of justice, the traditional American view that Lady Justice is blind and we're a nation of laws, not a nation of men. He doesn't do that. That little smirk says more clearly than 1,000 of Joe Biden's gobbledygook nonsense words that he is targeting his political enemies. And he's going to target you too, if you get mouthy about it. That's what that smirk says. I don't know how else you interpret that smirk. That's very dangerous because what that says is, I don't need you. I don't need you media, first of all. I certainly don't need you voters. I don't care. You're going to call me corrupt. You're going to say I'm imprisoning my enemies. You're going to say that I'm changing the election rules, or the Democrat establishment changed the election rules before the election in 2020, and we're keeping a lot of those changes in place. Yeah, whatever. Tough. We got the power and you don't. We're going to sit on the ballot box and you're not. Tough. What are you going to do about it? smirk, and walk away. That's very dangerous. It seems to me the people are broadly with Trump right now. Obviously, there are plenty of people who still hate Trump and will vote for Biden. But if the election were held today and it were a fair election, I think Trump wins by a pretty decisive margin. And maybe Biden thinks that too. But maybe he just thinks, yeah, I don't need to convince you of anything. I don't need to campaign. I don't need to deny my wrongdoing. I can throw my opponent in jail, and there's nothing you can do about it. He already brags about this stuff. Biden brags for all of his talk about how we need to have the rule of law and no man is above justice. Biden brags about ignoring the rulings of the Supreme Court and exceeding his legitimate constitutional power as president.
Supreme Court blocked me from relieving student debt, but they didn't stop me. So far, I've relieved student debt for nearly 5 million Americans. A significant number are black borrowers. So you can chase your dreams, start a family, buy your first home, start a business, and so much more.
The Supreme Court blocked me, but I don't care about the Supreme Court because I don't care about the Constitution because I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, including imprison my political enemies, because this is a nation of laws. And l'état c'est moi. I am the state. I am the law. I, Joe Biden. Totally brazen. And again, what the conservatives are going to do is we're going to say, but actually, look at the hypocrisy. Imagine if the shoe were on the other foot. He doesn't care. Actually, I think this might hurt Joe Biden because people are going to really turn against him. Yeah, maybe. I hope that's true. But what Biden is saying is, I don't care if the people turn against me. I'm going to pay off my political cronies. I'm going to pay off the college graduates who are reliably liberal, who are on average going to make much more money than non-college graduates. And I'm going to take money from non-college graduates and pay off the college graduates because the non-college graduates don't vote for me and the college graduates do. So I'm going to pay off some of my cronies, make sure they're still on my side. But public opinion broadly, I don't care. That's what he's saying, which reflects not just a problem with the Biden campaign or an advantage to Trump. It represents potentially, if Biden is right, a major weakness, perhaps a total collapse of our political order. The libs rely on letting their friends in the media sweep their corruption and crimes under the rug, and then, the public forgets about it. Maybe they don't even care what the public thinks, as we've been talking about all day. We should not let that sort of thing happen with Dr. Fauci, who was a manipulative little tyrant with a thick Queen's accent during the COVID hysteria. Fauci's corruption during that pandemic is disturbing. There's so much more to the story that I covered in my docuseries, Fauci Unmasked. He's the highest paid employee in our federal government. And beginning in the spring of 2020, Dr. Fauci began to set national policy that affected the way that 330 million Americans lived their lives.
For goodness sakes, I'm telling you, wear a mask, keep social distancing. There's nothing political about that.
But who is Anthony Fauci?
People who have conspiracy theories, those are people that don't particularly care for me.
In this short series, we will do what the establishment media have refused to do. We will give you an unvarnished look at the career of the most powerful politician in America, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Don't you think it's time that you step down and let someone else who has a more effective message?
Actually, no.
This 3-part series is available now on DailyWire Plus. Go check it out ahead of Fauci's testimony. Trump knows who and what he's up against. He knows how corrupt this is. Even if some conservatives are still confused about it, they still think, oh, well, he'll get a fair shake. He just needs to, I don't know, stop tweeting or something. And then, no, he knows that he's up against an extreme amount of corruption. They're trying to imprison him. And so the question then becomes, will he play ball with that establishment? Will he beg them to go easy on him? He was just asked this question by Pete Hegseth on Fox. Here's his answer.
The judge could decide to say, hey, house arrest or even jail.
It could.
How do you face what that could look
I'm okay with it. I saw one of my lawyers the other day on television saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that to the president. I said, you don't beg for anything. You just, the way it is.
You don't beg for anything. You don't try to play nice with the crooked judge. You don't try to beg for forgiveness. This answer reminds me of a scene that crops up on this show probably once a year. And it's that one of those last scenes of Breaking Bad when the cop brother-in-law, Hank, is facing the criminal gunman. And Walter, the lead of the show, he says, hey, Hank, just cut a deal with him. Cut a deal. Come on. Why are you playing hardball here? And Hank gives a very wise answer.
Should I let you go? My name is Asac Schrader.
My name is Asac Trump.
Go yourself.
That's what he's saying. That's what Trump is saying to Alvin Bragg and Biden and all the rest.
Listen to me.
Here are the squishes.
You gotta tell him. You gotta tell him now that we can work this out. Please.
Come on, Donald.
Please.
Come on, just tell him we'll work it all out.
What? You want me to beg? You're the smartest guy I ever met. And you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago.
That's the key. That's the key.
Do what you're gonna do.
There it is. Do what you're gonna do. Ben made this point. Ben and I were doing some coverage right when the verdict came out. And Ben asked, do you think he's going to go to jail? I said, well, it would seem that's where this is leading. And Ben said, yeah, I agree. It's Chekhov's gun. The Chekhov's gun notion is this idea that in the theater, if a gun is shown in Act 1, the gun must be fired by Act 3. You can't set something up and then not pay it off. Certainly not something that's significant. And that, I think, is Trump's point here. Trump is asked, hey, are you going to try to get some leniency on maybe on the sentencing or on this or on that? And he says, absolutely not. I'm not going to beg. And what's implicit there? Because they made up their mind 10 minutes ago. They made up their mind 10 months ago. Really, they made up their mind on this guy almost 10 years ago now. The very fact that they're upending 234 years of American legal and political tradition to prosecute a former president, current major party nominee, never happened before. The fact that they're doing that means they're willing to go all the way. There's no convincing them at this point. The fact that they spied on his campaign in 2015, the fact that they undermined his whole administration, the fact that they impeached him twice, tried to remove him from office unsuccessfully, the fact that they raided his home, the fact that they did all of these things tells you what? They're going to go 99% of the way. They're not going to finish the job. Of course, they're going to try to send him to prison, unless they think that they don't have the juice, unless they think that they can't get away with it. Donald Trump could get out of prison time or even house arrest time only on two conditions, and it's not going to be on leniency. The first is, if the political order is not wholly corrupt. Our political order is substantially corrupt. But if the political order is not wholly corrupt, then there is a chance that he won't go to prison or be placed on house arrest. The second thing that is required for that to happen is if the people can bring enough civil pressure to bear. So if the political order is totally corrupt, it doesn't matter how much pressure the people bring, because the system is not in any way responsive to the people. If the political order is just largely corrupt but not totally corrupt, and the people don't bring pressure to bear, he's still going to prison. If the people do bring enough civil pressure to bear that the political establishment, which is not wholly corrupt, believes that it can't sustain that, it can't bear that out, then there is a chance that he avoids house arrest and prison time. But if that happens, it is not going to come from leniency. The liberal establishment made up its mind a lot longer than 10 minutes ago. They will kill this guy if they have the chance and they think it serves their interests. What does Trump think about prison time? Forget about leniency, forget about him getting off. What would it look like if the liberals actually jail the former president, the current major party nominee?
Some have suggested you could appeal straight to the Supreme Court because of the special nature of this case. When it comes to the legal maze that you're still facing. And the judge could decide to say, hey, house arrest or even jail.
It could.
How do you face what that could look
I'm okay with it. I saw one of my lawyers the other day on television saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that to the president. I said, you don't beg for anything. You just, the way it is. Think of it. They have all my books. So that could happen. I don't know that the public would stand it, I'm not sure the public would stand for it. With a,
if they tried house arrest or
I think it would be tough for the public to take. At a certain point, there's a breaking point.
At a certain point, there's a breaking point. This is simply a fact of politics. I'm sure the libs are going to spin this as Donald Trump is threatening another insurrection 2.0. Even worse than the first. He's super duper mega Hitler. This is just a fact of politics. There's a breaking point because no purely human institution is invincible or eternal. You might have thought that the French monarchy was so resplendent. It was so powerful. But you know what? At a certain point, the dirty, rotten, filthy Jacobins are going to have an opportunity and they're going to take it. You might have thought the same of the Russian royal family, but those dirty, rotten, filthy Bolsheviks are going to take their opportunity at a certain point. There is a breaking point, even for the most durable institutions that are purely human institutions, because this is a fallen world and the things of this world are all subject to corruption. So in a way, this is the silver lining to the storm cloud, because one thing that the liberals really benefit from is making us believe that they're omnipotent, making us believe that they're eternal and invincible. They're not. They're not. It's not hopeless optimism to say that we can still beat these people. It's actually just a fact of a fallen world. They are not gods. They think they're gods. They want to make themselves into gods. But pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, speaking of the public's tolerance for insult, Fauci is testifying today on Capitol Hill. And ahead of his testimony, the GOP has released closed-door testimony from back in January. We'd already heard some leaks about this stuff, but it's pretty astounding because it means that yet another conspiracy theory has finally been proven true. You remember back in the days of COVID, now, what is that, 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago? The libs told us, you need to stand 6 feet apart. You need to social distance. It's very important to stop the spread of the virus that you social distance. Grocery stores had little 6 foot apart dots that you had to stand on. This was implemented everywhere. Doctors' offices, government buildings, all of it. At the time, I said, and I was censored for saying things like this, that the social distancing was totally bogus and ridiculous and based on nothing. And I was called a big, ignorant conspiracy theorist dope. Well, now Dr. Fauci is admitting that I and you, we were all right. Fauci was asked where the 6 foot social distancing rule came from. He said, it sort of just appeared. He was asked, well, where did you get the idea for it? He goes, I don't recall. It sort of just appeared. He was asked, are there any studies that this came from? He said he was, quote, not aware of studies that supported the social distancing. He said that even conducting such studies, quote, would be very difficult to do. So there's one. The social distancing stuff, completely bogus. Fauci looked us in the face. He said it was very important. We had to do it. Then closed-door testimony on the record before Congress. Oh, yeah, that was totally fake. How about a second conspiracy theory? Now seems to be proven true. At the time that COVID came about, we were told by the liberal establishment, it came from a wet market in Wuhan. There was a wet market, there was a bad batch of bat soup, and it just came from nature. It has absolutely nothing to do with that extremely high-level biolab that's just a stone's throw away from the wet market in Wuhan, a biolab, which, by the way, we at the NIH in America, we, through Dr. Fauci, directly, in fact, were funding, even though we lied about funding it. We lied on the record before Congress, before Rand Paul. Then it came out, actually, there's Fauci's signature right there on the grant. We were funding the lab anyway. Never mind, forget about that. Look over there, is that a butterfly? Even beyond the funding part, we were told it was a conspiracy theory to suggest that the virus came from the Wuhan lab. Now, Fauci admits, I think maybe, it could have come from the lab, maybe. His exact quote is, because he was asked, was the lab leak a conspiracy theory? He says, I think people could have made conspiracy aspects from it, but COVID, quote, could be a lab leak. Could be a lab leak. Now, there are crazy conspiracy theories that come from it, but no longer does he say that the lab leak is a conspiracy theory. He says, I think that in and of itself, it isn't inherently a conspiracy theory, but people spin things that are crazy. Okay, so everything we were told about COVID was wrong, or even more than just being innocently wrong, was a lie, a misdirection from this guy. And he thinks we're all just going to forget about it because it's been a long time. He's testifying today. I have a 3-part series on the Daily Wire. You should go check it out. If you're not a Daily Wire member, you should join just to watch the series, frankly. Though you'll get discounts on all sorts of other things too while you're there. So check it out. Can't wait. Can't wait for the show tomorrow to discuss the new conspiracy theories that are proven true as a result of his testimony. Ladies and gents, let's talk about something crucial. Our justice system is crumbling. It's time to fight back. At the Daily Wire, we are committed to bringing you the facts free from the lib agenda. When you join Daily Wire Plus, you get unfiltered, uncensored stories to the most trusted names in conservative media, completely ad-free. You will unlock unlimited access to our entire catalog of entertainment, hit movies, series, groundbreaking docs, you name it. Sign up now at dailywireplus.com. Get 25% off annual memberships with the code FIGHT. That is 25% off when you use the code FIGHT at checkout. Do not miss out. Join us today as we fight the libs and build the future. My favorite comment on Friday, I suppose it was, is from Ethan Moon 3925, who says, in the future, people will believe the origin of the phrase trumped up charges is about Donald Trump. That's true. You want to talk about myth and history and false etymology. That's a great one. But even if it's not actually the etymology of that phrase, it tells the story. It is narratively true. Now, speaking of dubious science, spooky story out in CNBC about the Internet of Bodies. Headline, the next generation of the Internet of Bodies could meld tech and human bodies together. What is you've heard of the Internet of Things, probably. The libs love using that phrase. It's basically where your refrigerator can receive faxes or something. I don't know. I try to avoid the Internet of Things. The first category, though, of this Internet of Bodies is undeniable. And it's external, and it's your phone, and it's your smartwatches, and it's your rings, the rings that measure how you sleep and how your heart's pulsing. That is real. That's really happening. Elon Musk made this point some months ago. He said, you're so worried about cyborgs. You're already a cyborg. Your phone is virtually inseparable from your body. You rely on it like you would rely on an organ, and that's largely true. The second generation, though, of Internet of Bodies also already exists, and it's internal. These are things like pacemakers that have digital implants, or digital pills that you can take that send all sorts of information outside of your body, or smart prosthetics that are hardwired into your nerves and muscles. And then you get to the third generation. Speaking of Elon Musk, that's where you plug your brain into the matrix. That's that Neuralink brain chip where you have a real-time connection between your body and the internet. So what we're heading into, and we're kind of already there. There's already a guy who has the Elon chip in his brain. It's not just the future pie in the sky. We're already there. And it's called transhumanism. It's about improving humanity with technology. And it's very dangerous. I'm not saying that there's not any use for it whatsoever, but it's very dangerous. And the reason it's very dangerous, and it's fitting, I guess, that we're talking about this during Pride Month, is that this is a rival to true religion. This is a fundamentally different conception of human nature than Christianity. In Christianity, God becomes man. In liberalism and posthumanism, man becomes God. Totally different moves. St. Anselm of Canterbury, one of the great saints and theologians, wrote a book called Cur Deus Homo, Why God Becomes Man. Yuval Harari, one of the great intellectuals of modern liberalism, wrote a book called Homo Deus. You've got Cur Deus Homo by St. Anselm. You've got Homo Deus. Man becomes God. Man God in modern liberalism and posthumanism. The Christian view posits salvation through the grace of God God coming all the way down to you, redeeming mankind on the cross. You can reject God's grace, or you can cooperate with God's grace. There's an aspect of your will that's involved in that too. But it's gratuitous. It's coming from God through grace. The modern liberal post-humanist view is you get salvation through technology, which is to say you get salvation through human works and artifice. In the Christian view, man is a natural creature. God makes us. In the post-humanist liberal view, man makes himself. Man becomes an artificial creature because man is made through the artificial arts of scientists and artists. Totally different views of human nature. I'm not saying you can't go to the doctor. I'm not saying you can't even get a smart prosthetic or a pacemaker or something. There could be a morally licit, ethical kind of use of technology, there always has been, to restore functions that have been lost, to restore the problems that go along with our nature because we live in a fallen world because Adam and Eve abused their free will. But that's not what posthumanism is about. It's not just about, for now, maybe that's where they've contented themselves to begin. You know, a guy is paralyzed, so he gets a brain chip and then he can control a computer screen. But where this is going, where they're openly talking about this, is not just repairing things that have been broken, but enhancing human nature itself. That is contrary to the Christian view of human nature and the Christian view of salvation and the Christian view of virtue and the Christian view of everything. This is an alternative religion, which liberalism has always been. Liberalism has always been kind of an ape of Christianity. It uses some of the same language, it takes some of the same ideas, but it perverts them to really, really bad ends. You can already see where this is going to go. If some people get this kind of enhancement, what about the people first of all, who are the people who are going to get it? It's going to be the wealthy and the connected. What about the people who don't have that? What about the people who don't have that access? What's going to happen to them? If man becomes a product of his own making, is that going to turn out well? Is man wholly good? Are the things that we do when we build new technologies, is that's wholly good? No, so we're not totally evil. We haven't been totally destroyed by the fall, but we do really bad stuff. As technology progresses, what happens? We build bigger and bigger and deadlier weapons. That's the kind of thing that happens. You think this is going to be good? Who do you think is better at making a man? God or man? God or fallen man? Doesn't seem all that difficult to me, but this is a fallen world and we're subject to all sorts of temptation and we want to be God. I mean, that's the sin that caused Adam to fall, is pride. That's the sin that caused Satan to fall like lightning from heaven, is pride. And that's the sin that we celebrate this month, pride. It is no coincidence. It's no coincidence that Pride Month is in June, the month of marriage, the month of wedding. And it's no coincidence that Pride Month is called Pride Month. If Pride Month were even just about weird sex stuff, you'd think it could be called, I don't know, month or something. You'd think it'd be called Decadence Month. I don't know, Self-Actualization Month, Autonomy Month. No, it's Pride Month because it's about a lot more than that. The weird sex stuff is just an expression and a symbol of what they're really after, which is what liberalism is really after, which is the worship not of God and the acceptance not of the moral order, but a worship of the self and a submission only to the radical expression of the individual will. That's what it comes down to. Now, speaking of religion, Pope Francis is having a great few weeks. You know, I know a lot of people sometimes, they hear these phrases from Pope Francis and they raise some eyebrows, and then sometimes you see the Holy Father, he'll suppress the traditional Latin Mass, the liturgy that formed statistically pretty much all the saints ever, and that's kind of weird. And I know that people have these questions, dubia, you might say, about aspects of the Francis pontificate. Last few weeks, though, you know, pretty good stuff that we're getting out of the public comments of the Holy Father. There was that phrase, which I think I'm not allowed to translate for YouTube without being bleeped, but it's apt, I suppose, for Pride Month, where he said, we don't need to take any more gay seminarians. There's already enough for us. And then he was asked by that woman in the 60 Minutes interview, do you think we'll ever have priestesses, women deacons? He goes, no, which is a great answer. Well, he's got another one. This is being reported in the Italian press. The Italian is Il Papa a porte chiuse, il chiacchiericcio è roba da donne. The chatter is woman stuff. It's woman stuff. And he says, according to the reports here, noi abbiamo I pantaloni, dobbiamo dire le cose. We wear pants. We need to say things. Little chatter. Yeah, that's woman stuff. We're men, okay? We wear the pants. We got to say things with our whole chest. It's a good line. It's been a good few weeks. And I know, it's always, the Papa Francesco was misinterpreted by the news media. But, okay, these aren't so bad. And who knows? Maybe some have suggested that, you get one good line, but then some perhaps misguided follow-up to it or misinterpreted or whatever. It's a confusing pontificate without question. But I'm just going to be happy for these lines. No to priestesses and deaconesses, and chatter is for women. We do have to say things with our whole chest. Okay, because the libs and the principalities and powers of this world thrive on confusion, on subtle language, on prevarication, on confusion. And we just need to say things clearly. We live in a world where even the basic statement that a man and a woman are different is controversial. We live in a world where even the suggestion that we shouldn't have pride parades of like leather daddies smacking each other in front of 5-year-olds down Main Street, where that's somehow controversial. Well, it got controversial because we just kept squishing and squishing and squishing. Say it with our whole chest. This is one of the facts that we can take to the bank. It will be eternally true. Pride is bad. Pride should not be celebrated. No expression of pride, of excessive love of one's own excellence should ever be accepted or really even tolerated, certainly not celebrated. That's a fact, because pride goes before destruction and the spirit is lifted up before a fall. The rest of this show continues now. It's Music Monday. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.